Moments ago, House lawmakers did pass that legislation. The bill still faces challenges, of course, in the Senate, where Republicans have signaled they plan to make changes. Steve, good morning. So let's talk about the deficit.
Let's just put some numbers on some of the cuts. First, the extension of the personal income tax reductions that were made during the 2017 bill and are set to expire at the end of this year, $2.2 trillion over 10 years. Raising the standard deduction, $1.3 trillion. The child tax credit, $800 billion. And then you get into Trump's campaign promises, no tax on overtime, car loans, interest, and tips, $200 billion, increasing defense spending. This is his attempt to take Social Security taxes away from seniors so they don't have to pay them by giving them a special deduction. And then you get into the cuts, the student loan changes, the climate funds, and Medicaid, $700 billion of Medicaid cuts. So what does that do to the deficit? Here is the baseline deficit. So even without this tax bill, the deficit was essentially going to keep going up over the next 10 years, maybe come down a little bit at the very end, but essentially up. Then you add in the tax bill that we just talked about, including the fact that they've played the same gimmick they played in 2017, setting up some of these things to expire, and that would make the deficit impact higher, but not as high as if you made all this stuff permanent. The record of Congress, stuff almost always gets made permanent, and so somewhere along in here, they will make this permanent and will end up on this line. And this line is something like $25 trillion of additional debt.
Let's turn to your second chart with the headline, Tax Cuts for the Wealthy, Spending Cuts for the Poor.
If you're in the top 20% of Americans, you're going to get roughly a 3.7% increase in your after-tax income, really all from these tax cuts. But if you go all the way to the bottom and everything in between essentially leads you to the bottom, if you're in the bottom 20%, you actually lose $800. Why do you lose $800? You get a very small tax cut, and you get a very large cut in Medicaid and these other benefits that we were just talking about that affects the 20% disproportionately. So this is a highly regressive bill that essentially favors the wealthy, doesn't do much for the middle class, and hurts the poor. And then if you want to see this in stark comparison, if we simply eliminated the tax cuts for people making over $500,000 a year, which is roughly what President Biden was proposing, it would save $1.1 trillion. That happens to be just slightly more than the Medicaid cuts and the food stamps, or SNAP cuts, if you will, put together. So if we simply eliminated these tax cuts, we could eliminate these budget cuts on these poor people and end up, from a budget point of view, in the same place.